And to anyone that's taking time to watch this short explainer video, just a heads up that this is actually the report itself. So it is far too busy for a traditional slide deck, but I thought that it might be helpful to have a little explainer if I'm not there to accompany you. And I know that these sorts of things can feel a little bit dry and overwhelming, and you think, that's a bit of information. So I just wanted to give you context, which will help you wrap your mind around my thinking and the rationale generally when it comes to putting something like this together. So I guess just in a nutshell, I've this conversation evolved, and this sort of report and evaluation evolved out of a conversation that Chloe and I had with Anna a couple of weeks ago, where the conversation around the development of an FAQ came up. We debated the pros and cons of this, and we evolved into a state where we were talking about the need to actually put more information on the website, so that information was available to our carers, would-be carers, and other stakeholders. And so that's where this evaluation came from. So I guess this gives a more of a insight into the current state of the website and the potential future state, and some of the I guess frameworks, ways of working, lenses that we can bring to this to help to examine, where we might be, where there may be opportunities for improvement, and where we're doing quite well. So I think just to give you as a listener some information around why I might have approached things this way. So my background is working in strategy and design teams, and the one thing that we would always see when working in community or even working within our own organization is that there's generally, as soon as there is a particular challenge raised, people jump straight into it. And as a strategy, design, and social impact team, we understood how much time is wasted when the why is not understood and busy work sort of takes over. And so I guess through this process, I'm embodying the true spirit of taking a step back and bringing some lenses to understand what might be the contributing factors to whatever the current state is, and consider some of the different ways of understanding the steps ahead. So I'm just going to walk through a particular framework, a communications framework, first of all, and then look a little bit more at the design aspects of the website, and then a delivery roadmap, which helps understand when it's not necessarily just our team and leadership that are involved, but we work in a broader organization to understand how some of those pieces of the puzzle come together so that we can ensure that communication is clear and any contributions are efficient and valued. Further considerations are that I've brought in another particular, I guess, taking it, zooming out a little bit, service design, just through some of the things that I noted when I was observing and reviewing the website, and the role of measurement and valuation and impacts. And I've also got a couple of appendices I've got attached as well, just to extend the ideas a little bit. So I'm just going to leave it here because I don't want you to get too overwhelmed by the slides, but essentially the where, what, why, how, when framework is a way to cast your attention into the various functions or needs that anybody will have when they come to a service. And so while we're on one side of the fence, and we have a lot of tacit knowledge or assumed knowledge, there is a lot of information that doesn't always make its way over to our customer or our carers or our stakeholders. And this helps us to essentially highlight all of that information and ensure that we're doing a really good job of communicating that in a way that's most helpful for those that are going to enter our door and have no idea how we function or how our service works. And it also helps us to understand how we might be able to bring those things, we might be able to highlight those things and do it in a way that suggests, I guess, a particular culture around our work as well. So we can sort of bring them into the spotlight and then craft them in a way that reflects the work that we're doing in the way that we want people to feel in our when they enter our service or exit our service. So yeah, essentially when we give people all of the information up front in a non-overwhelming way, it actually helps them to take the next step. Some of the reasons that people hesitate around engagement with service is because they have a lot of contingency thinking around what might happen. So if we can give them information that helps them develop a bit of a picture of how an interaction might work, because they understand something about the operational aspects, the how, essentially, which is quite often missed, then it helps them to walk into the service without a million questions in their mind, wondering if they're actually going to do something wrong or if maybe they're in the wrong place. So I guess there's some key considerations, but you can read more around these slides to understand something of this particular way of thinking. So I won't go through this now, but essentially I did do a review, and I think there's certainly a lot of strengths, and some of the areas that we maybe could improve things are an area that really are related to the fact that we are a new service and we're still figuring it out. And having reviewed other Connect websites, I can see that they're doing some things that are a little bit different than us in the way they communicate, but they're also probably challenged a little bit by their particularly new concept as well. So I'll go into that in a minute around how we might be able to bolster some of our thinking in that area through service design. So another area that I looked at was FAQs. And in particular, I looked at this idea of, we sort of went from FAQs to what if we put everything on the website. One of the challenges is with that is when everything is visible and everything is listed, people feel quite overwhelmed. And so there are a number of different creative ways in which, we can provide alternatives to that in ways that's playful, in ways that satisfies people that have very different ways of navigating websites. So, for example, we think of the really curious and driven user, the person that's really digging for information. They might be anxious. They might need more information to reassure them. There's some that, might not need to dig around so much or might not want to explore things, but the immediate information for them, if they're in a state of overwhelm and they're feeling anxious and they just want a phone number and an address, then they can see that as well. And so I'm just going to quickly take you through. So just to recap, yes, scrolling can really create cognitive overload, decision fatigue, and if they skim over things, because there's so much information, they tend to jump off websites. People that need information really quickly, and that is a huge proportion of users. If they don't find things within the first, I think it's a minute, they'll get quite frustrated or they'll leave. So we're already getting potentially a loss of engagement, and also people that are a bit frustrated coming not quite understanding how things work. And some of our engagement with them might be, sometimes people I think have commented on picking up on some of that confusion or frustration. So some ways to address this particular issue is to use creative strategies of user experience design, such as these particular little widgets and this approach. So the accordion, which you might be familiar with, tabs, carousels, which I know that other Connects have used, and tooltips, which has the opportunity to pop things out. There are other less sophisticated ways when we don't have elaborate, coders or IT people. It's really just about making sure that there are subheadings and navigation is easy and information can be expanded in a clear way for people that aren't particularly tech literate quite easily. So I've mocked together a little hypothetical roadmap, because one of the biggest challenges in working with multidisciplinary teams in larger organizations, in my experience, is just figuring out who does what, and what we can do in house, and also if there are rules around what we can do, and if we can find hacks to make things easier, such as the use of AI in image generation. You might have seen that I've used quite a number of different images which I've generated. So just so we can work smarter, not harder, but also include everyone that's necessary into the conversation, such as marketing and comms, potentially, and IT folks. And if we've got dedicated analytics people. So I won't walk you through this, but that's a bit of a easy to follow roadmap, which probably doesn't encompass all of the things that we need to consider, but it's just essentially a light touch first stage version. So service design is something that is probably unfamiliar to some people, but service design is essentially an approach to testing ideas and ensuring that we understand the ins and outs of how a service works. So my background was working in service design, and that would mean building a service from scratch, or building a product from scratch, or building a project from scratch using human-centered design. But the aspect of service design that is particularly helpful is the illustrative quality of a service. So there's a couple of different strategies that that I would suggest might really help to communicate both internally and externally our service, and understand. Sometimes these things are not necessarily for the public; it's really for our thinking. So user journeys, is similar to a I guess a workflow, or a way of what the consumer experiences. The good thing about service design is it really looks at the front of house and back of house, and that means what's happening when we're engaging with what are all of the knock-on effects, or what are all of the things that are happening on our side when we're engaging with people. What are the touch points? What's the documentation? Sometimes we'd even look at what is the emotional experience. And that means that we have real clarity around how the system works and where we need to bolster or provide more resources to support the activity that unfolds. Personas is another one, and that's sometimes just to understand some of the bigger themes that our carers experience, so that we have a bit of a strategy around responding, and we can understand how to continue to build out our services to respond to the biggest needs that appear, as well as the outliers. Service blueprints, similar. Service blueprints just help us to really understand and map out a user journey, and but within the business itself, or with the organization. Incredibly useful pieces of resources to develop, because they help our thinking, and they help us to sort of I guess do a bit of that introspection around how things are working, and where we might want to where we might be spending a lot of energy and a lot of time reinventing the wheel, and areas that we might actually want to dedicate time and resources to. So it's not about creating more work or more complexity. It's actually about minimizing all of that, but it does take a little bit of work to get there. So I just wanted to say that this was prompted by the fact that there were things that I couldn't understand through the website, and then I realized that I couldn't necessarily find that information, or and so I think that there are some gaps in thinking, of course, because this is a new service, and so a service design would certainly help to bring some of the tacit knowledge or some of the uncertainties or some of the questions to the surface, so they can be understood, resolved, worked through, and named. Data measurement evaluation. Now, I'm taking a bit of a hunch on this one. I have no idea. And I haven't had this conversation around whether or not we do look at data related to movement on the website, but it's incredibly useful, particularly if we set it up in such a way that we actually have things for people to click, so we understand something about how they're behaving, how long they're spending on the website, what information they're opening. And that's one of the other benefits of accordions and that progressive display, is that we can actually see where people are going. Currently, we don't really have anything that leads to anything, so we can't really. We probably can only use narrative accounts of people's experience, which is also very, asking people about the website experience is a really valuable and useful activity, to really understand what people don't understand or what people are finding or what they're drawn to. And so essentially, I've just really emphasized the need to build this sort of data collection into a broader set of data modeling or data questions, so we can, keep learning about the needs of the carers and other stakeholders, and ensure that we're really doing all that we can to satisfy their needs, answer their questions, and warmly engage with them online. So, yeah, I think there is often an assumption that data is a really dry topic and it's not for us mortals, it's for IT people, or it's for finance people, or evaluation folks, but it's actually for us as storytellers and people that want to help people and want to support those in the community, because those feedback loops tell us a lot about what people need, want. It helps us to ensure that we're actually adjusting our language appropriately. It helps us to build connection. Every time we get positive or negative feedback or confused feedback, we can always make adjustments. But it does require learning that language to some degree, like to get a bit of a baseline to understand. And so that does require sometimes retrospectively gathering data so that we can move forward and understand what change looks like. So that's it from me. I hope you can take a moment to read through this. I look forward to any questions, comments, curiosities, reflections. I think it's really great to have frameworks in place like the why, what, where, how, and other approaches to evaluation, and to communicate these across the team so that we're all speaking similar languages. And I have some appendices just around the next steps questions that I would naturally have if I was leading this. These are the questions that I would ask you if you were right in front of me right now. And also just some examples of metrics that are pretty common. There's lots of them, but these are the things that you might want to look out for. So that's it from me. Thank you for taking time to go through this, and I look forward to chatting more.